Have you ever felt helpless? That somehow nothing you can do will change the situation that you find yourself in? But somehow, amidst all the darkness and crushing defeat, you look up and... excuse me a second. Where was I? 86 is a show that somehow captures the simultaneous hype and somberness of military combat and, by extension, political discourse. Taking place in the actual, far-off future of the mid-22nd century, we see a world in which many of mankind's transgressions continue to flourish, and by extension, we get to see in no uncertain terms how brutal and cruel humanity can truly be.
Well, you lived a good life, right? I'm only 10! I said good, not long.
But I mean, outside of that, it's just a straight hype train that just don't stop. Never in my life have I ever been so conflicted on how to write a video. This complete tonal shift between parts of the story that we have so far is just absolutely insane. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To truly understand what I mean, I think we should roll things back to the beginning. How's it going, everybody? Today, on this, our first episode... Alright, smartass, not that far back. So, my experience with 86 began a few weeks ago, as many of my experiences usually do, by Brandon holding me down against my will and forcing me to watch anime.
You have no idea what kind of hell I can bring you!
Oh, alright, enough, you broken record, okay?
That's alright though. If he didn't do that, this channel would have no content on it. At the time, I didn't really know anything about the show or its plot other than guns, and if I like Code Geass, then I'd probably like this. Needless to say, I was not prepared at all for the absolute tidal wave of heaviness about to enthusiastically high-five my face.
Thanks, Patrick.
Our story begins with the introduction of our main character, Vladilena Milize. And no, I totally didn't just have to copy and paste that name from the wiki while I was writing this video. Who was just promoted to the rank of major in the military of, one second. The Republic of San Magnolia. Throughout the first episode, we hear news snippets and military personnel mentioning the use of unmanned drones, and how the Republic hasn't sustained any casualties fighting in the war that they're currently in. And for whatever reason, Lena, which by the way is Vladilena's nickname, and I'll be using that from here on out because I'm not fucking insane, keeps getting visibly angry about it. Now, at this point, you're probably thinking to yourself, why would you be mad about that? What's your problem? Do you just enjoy seeing soldiers dying from horrible injuries, dismemberment, and disease on the battlefield? Yes. Oh, you were asking about Lena. Well, come to find out, you're actually the monster for thinking that. Because we find out that those unmanned drones are actually piloted by people who had their rights as humans stripped away from them. Oh, this is gonna be a fun video, isn't it? So seeing as how they have no more human rights, by the Republic's legal definition, they're not actually people.
I wouldn't exactly call them people, but yeah.
Therefore, the drones are legally unmanned. What could possibly make someone who is clearly a human not be considered a person? Well, you know, the usual reasons, like being born with any other features than white hair, fair skin, and blue eyes. Anyone who doesn't fall under the pure-blooded Alba race was forcefully deported into the unofficial 86th province or district in the country. Hence the name, 86. After the deportation, which by the way mirrors events that happened in our actual history, the 86 are given the option to fight in the Republic military for a 6-year contract, following which the 86 are granted their citizenship back. However, the Republic has absolutely no intentions of allowing that to happen, so instead, they send the 86 close to the end of their military service on suicide missions, even going as far as to issue execution orders against anyone who returns from the battlefield unsuccessful. Needless to say, nobody's ever made it back alive. Our main character, Lena, is absolutely appalled by this fact and decides to pull a Suzaku Kurorugi and change the system from within, proving that even in Nazi Germany, you can still find your waifu. Unfortunately, changing the system from within goes just about as well as it did for Suzaku. Meaning, change definitely happens, but you'll just have to watch the show and find out how. But after watching this video, of course. Wait a second. I see you clicking on moving forward, Lena finds out that she was just reassigned to be the handler for a new squadron of troops. By the way, being a handler means that you're basically looking at maps and sending soldiers battlefield data. Her new squadron, or at least new to her, is the infamous Spearhead Squadron. Apparently, the previous handler resigned or couldn't handle the stresses of war. Which to us sounds pretty rich, considering they stay in their temperature-controlled office in front of a computer screen while their subordinates are out fighting and dying in a war. However, neither you, me, or Lena are ready for just the sheer brutality and mental strain of the handler position, especially not for Spearhead Squadron. And it's not too much longer before you find out why. But I'm not going to tell you because if I did, then it would spoil the show. Now, going into this job, the usual animosity that you would expect toward the military of an oppressive ethno-state ensues. And despite Lena's best efforts, she just can't seem to get her squad to like her. I wonder why. It seems like the only person that can empathize with what she's doing is the squad leader. A guy by the name of Shine Nozen, or better known in the military as the Headless Reaper. Which, can I point out is like the coolest nickname of all time? That puts like every single gym bro with a Punisher skull on the back of his truck to shame. Shine and Lena, despite being from two totally different worlds and never having seen each other before, start to form a bond. However, as said before, the sentiment is largely not shared amongst the rest of the battle-hardened Spearhead Squadron, who see her empathy as patronizing and, without direct action, frequently state that they will never accept her as part of the unit. But despite that, after a few missions, Spearhead Squadron does begin to warm up to her slightly. Considering, you know, she does tend to do more than any other handler ever did. Ungrateful fuck. That is, until one fateful mission. Spearhead Squadron sustains some casualties. These casualties end up being the breaking point, showing the cracks between Spearhead Squadron and Lena, involving some very heated lashing out towards her. Despite all the harsh words and yelling and lashing out, we do begin to understand where they're coming from. After all, despite making minor efforts to make life better for Spearhead Squadron, at the end of the day, Lena is still just a cog in the machine that forces them to be out on the battlefield in the first place. And at this point, we start realizing that there is a stark difference between saying that you support a cause and actually doing something about it. Suzaku, you should be taking notes. So should you, Internet. After this pivotal moment, we do start seeing a more cohesive relationship between Lena and the members of her squadron form. Lena begins to take more and more initiative, even going as far as to disobey direct orders just to protect her squadron to the best of her abilities. And likewise, her squadron begins to rely on her more and more as her resolve strengthens. Okay, so for this next part, I really can't explain too much without spoiling significant portions of the story. So I'm just going to keep this part kind of quick and vague, considering I just spent the last 6 pages of the script talking about the beginning of part 1. Now, part 2 is where we start getting into the statements that I made earlier. It is at this point where the story turns away from being an extremely dark political drama dealing with racism, combat, PTSD, and other topics that make me wanna, to being a Code Geass-style regular war drama. In fact, the second half of this first season is actually pretty peaceful in comparison. That's not to say that dramatic or serious things don't happen, but that said, no one really dies, and the general heaviness and seriousness of the first season's pretty much all but lifted. And because of that, I almost made my neck do the same exact 180 that the story did while I was trying to write this video.
Do you think that if you just act nice and talk to us every day, that it's some kind of substitute for treating us as human? You didn't care enough to ask us for our real names! It never even crossed your goddamn mind!
A few moments later.
It's important to get off the front line so you can finally rest. Oh, hey, come on, I got presents for all of you.
Oh, okay.
However, even though the story isn't as heavy and, dare I say, edgy as the first part, it's kind of a welcome change. Now, both parts 1 and 2 have music composed by the legendary Hiroyuki Sawano. So that said, even in the first part, despite all the doom and gloom, the show still finds time to include some hype as hell action scenes. In fact, at this point, I'm pretty sure that Sawano has at least some kind of involvement with the anime direction, because it seems like every single time he's involved with the show, it always devolves into being an anime version of a Michael Bay film. Which, to be fair, with a soundtrack like this, how could you not? But man, in part 2, that energy is dialed up to like 11,000, and it seems like every single episode we're getting some kind of bombastic action. That said though, the first part's slower pace and heaviness was completely necessary to establish the hell that all these characters went through, and because of that, you can appreciate when the cast progresses in the story so much more. Part 2 is more like watching these characters that you're now intimately familiar with find themselves and starts to feel more like the beginning point of a much greater story, and that's because it is. At the time of writing this, no season 2 for 86 has been announced. However, the anime in its entirety only covers the first 3 volumes of the light novel, and there are currently 11. So if I'm going to finish this story, I better get reading. '86 is a beautiful and dark story that centers around the horrors of war, human rights abuse, and perseverance despite all the impossible odds. And without spoiling anything, I'll just say that despite the fact that the anime story is no way complete, the show finds a perfect point to end on to allow a viewer a sense of closure in lieu of the murky possibility of a continuation. Every part of the story led up to a point at the end that you don't get a full conclusion to until the very end of the episode. And when that happens, you're left with such a profound sense of gratification that you feel as though that all the heaviness and hardship that you went through was all well worth it in the end. And even though this is not the end of the story, I can think of no better way to conclude such an amazing anime. Here's to hoping for a season 2. Oh, hi there. How you doing? So yeah, this video, huh? Oh boy, I think I've spent more time trying to figure out what I can and can't do with copyrighted music, more in this video than I actually spent editing it. My brain's not working correctly. I just got done editing everything. I feel like I'm gonna explode. Yeah, so I don't really have too much to say in this outro. If I really wanted to get off on my tangents here, I would just go off and complain about YouTube's copyright garbage, and also how Lars Ulrich, the drummer for Metallica, decided to fuck copyright up for everybody back in the year 2002 with the Napster crisis. Fuck you, Lars Ulrich. But none of this is news to anybody who's been alive for more than 5 minutes. So that said, instead of me incessantly bitching about how much of a pain in the ass it was for me to figure out what I could and couldn't do with music, and also hoping to God that I don't get copyrighted later down the line for using anything via Kadokawa's catalog, I'm just gonna sit here and say, please like, comment, and subscribe before I get hit with any kind of more copyright garbage. Yeah, that's pretty much all I got. Like, just do the YouTube stuff, man. Just do the YouTube stuff. I'm sorry, I just decided to record this outro on a whim. So, yeah, thanks for watching the video. I'm gonna go to bed and hopefully wake up and then work on the next video, which will be on Spice and Wolf, so keep an eye out for that. That'll probably be next month sometime. Anyways, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.